It was a quiet Tuesday evening in Portland, and I was in the kitchen preparing dinner for Sarah. The rain tapped softly against the windows, and everything felt normal, peaceful even. My wife called from upstairs saying she would be home late because she had dinner plans with some college friends. I smiled, happy she was finally taking time for herself after months of working nonstop. But when I picked up her phone from the kitchen counter to bring it to her before she left, the screen lit up with a message that made my heart stop. The text read, "Can't wait to see you tonight, baby. Wear that red dress I love." I stood there, frozen, my hands trembling, as the device felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. That's when everything I believed about my marriage shattered in 1 second. Before I tell you what happened next, I would love to know where you are watching from. Drop your city in the comments below. And if you have ever felt that gut punch of betrayal, hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell. You are not alone in this journey, and trust me, you will want to see how this story unfolds. Now let me take you back to where this nightmare really began. My name is Clarence, and 5 years ago, I met Sarah at a tech conference in Seattle. She worked in marketing for a startup, and I was a software engineer for a mid-sized company. We met during a coffee break, and honestly, it was not the most glamorous beginning. I accidentally bumped into her while reaching for a sugar packet, and my coffee spilled all over my shirt. She laughed, not at me, but with genuine warmth, and handed me a stack of napkins. Her eyes sparkled with kindness, and I knew right then I wanted to know everything about her. We talked for hours that day, missing half the conference sessions. She told me about her dreams of launching her own marketing agency, and I shared my passion for building apps that actually helped people. It felt effortless, like we had known each other for years. We dated for 2 years before I proposed on a hiking trip to Mount Hood. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and when I got down on one knee, she cried happy tears. Our wedding was small, intimate, just close friends and family, at a vineyard outside Portland. The first 3 years of marriage were everything I had hoped for. We had our Sunday morning tradition of making pancakes together while listening to old jazz records. We would hike the trails around Oregon every weekend, exploring waterfalls and forests. Our evenings were spent curled up on the couch watching movies, her head on my shoulder, my arm around her waist. I believed Sarah was my soulmate, my partner for life, the person who would stand beside me through everything. But about 6 months ago, things started to change. At first, the shifts were subtle, so small I convinced myself I was imagining them. Sarah began working late more frequently, coming home at 10 or 11 at night instead of her usual 6:30. When I asked about her projects, she gave vague answers about new client demands and upcoming campaigns. She was constantly on her phone, texting and smiling at the screen, but whenever I walked into the room, she would flip it over or tuck it away. Our physical intimacy disappeared almost overnight. Every time I tried to initiate sex, she had an excuse ready. She was too tired, had a headache, or was stressed about work. I tried to be understanding, thinking maybe she was going through something and needed space. Then came the physical changes. Sarah started buying new clothes, expensive dresses, and lingerie I had never seen her wear. She changed her hairstyle, going from her natural brown to highlighted blonde with layers that framed her face differently. She joined a gym and went religiously every morning before work. I thought maybe she was just trying to feel better about herself, rediscovering her confidence after years of routine. My best friend Marcus, who worked with me at the same company, noticed the changes too. One afternoon during lunch, he leaned across the table and asked quietly, "Man, you sure everything is okay at home?" I defended Sarah, immediately telling him she was just stressed with her job. Her company was launching a major product and she needed to focus. Marcus nodded but did not look convinced. Looking back now, I realize I was lying to myself because facing the truth was too terrifying. That Tuesday night, when I saw the text message on her phone, everything clicked into place like puzzle pieces I'd been refusing to see. I scrolled up through the conversation, my stomach twisting with each line I read. There were dozens of messages going back months filled with intimate words and promises. There were photos. Sarah had sent pictures of herself in lingerie I did not recognize, poses that were meant for someone else's eyes. One message from Sarah made my blood run cold. "He doesn't suspect anything. He's too trusting." I felt like I had been punched in the chest, the air knocked out of my lungs. I heard footsteps on the stairs and looked up to see Sarah descending, and my breath caught for a different reason now. She wore a red dress that hugged her curves perfectly, her makeup flawless, her hair styled in soft waves. She looked beautiful, but that beauty felt like a knife twisting in my gut, because I knew it was not for me. She walked into the kitchen and glanced around, frowning slightly. "Have you seen my phone?" she asked casually, as if this were just another ordinary evening. I held up the device, and our eyes met. "Sarah, who's texting you?" My voice came out steadier than I felt inside. She reached for the phone quickly, but I saw the flash of panic cross her face before she masked it with annoyance. "Just a friend from work," she said, her tone dismissive. I took a breath, trying to keep my composure. "A friend who calls you baby." The question hung in the air between us, heavy and undeniable. Sarah's jaw tightened. She snatched the phone from my hand and slipped it into her clutch. "Clarence, don't start this. It's nothing." Her voice had an edge now, defensive and cold. "Then show me your phone," I said, quietly. She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something shift in her expression. It was not guilt or remorse. It was irritation, as if I were inconveniencing her. "You're being paranoid," she said finally. "I have to go." She turned toward the door, and I felt panic rising in my chest. I stepped in front of the door, blocking her path. "Sarah, if you walk out that door tonight, there will be consequences." My voice was calm, but every word carried the weight of the decision she was about to make. She looked at me with something close to contempt and laughed a short, bitter sound. "Consequences? What are you going to do, Clarence? Lock me in." She crossed her arms over her chest, her eyes challenging me. I held her gaze, refusing to back down. "I'm giving you one chance. Cancel this dinner. Stay home. We will talk." For a moment I thought I saw hesitation flicker across her face, but it vanished as quickly as it came. "I'm not canceling anything," she said firmly. "You're being ridiculous." I felt the anger rising now, hot and sharp in my throat. "I know you're meeting him. I saw the messages." Her face went pale for just a second before the color rushed back in a flush of anger. "You went through my phone. That's invasion of privacy," she shouted, her voice rising. I took a step closer. "You're my wife. I have the right to know if you're cheating." The word hung between us like a physical barrier. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but they were angry tears, not sad ones. "I'm not cheating," she insisted, but her voice wavered. "It's just dinner." I looked at her, really looked at her in that red dress with her perfect makeup and styled hair. "Then why the red dress? Why the lies?" I asked quietly. She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. The silence stretched out, painful and suffocating. Finally, she said in a voice that was cold and distant, "I need space. You've become controlling." The accusation stung, even though I knew it was a deflection. She pushed past me, her shoulder hitting mine as she reached for the door handle. I stood there frozen as she walked out into the rainy night. The door closed behind her with a soft click, and I was left standing in the hallway, my heart pounding in my ears. The house felt impossibly quiet without her. I walked back to the living room and sank onto the couch, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to chase after her, to drag her back and demand the truth. But another part of me, the part that was already breaking, knew that this was the moment everything changed. I could not sleep. I sat in the living room with my laptop, the glow of the screen, the only light in the dark house. My hands were shaking as I logged into our joint bank account, something I had not checked in months because I trusted her. What I found made my stomach turn. There were charges at expensive restaurants. I had never been to places with names like Le Pigeon and Canard that cost hundreds of dollars per meal. There were hotel bookings at boutique hotels in downtown Portland, charges on nights when Sarah had told me she was on business trips to Seattle or San Francisco. And then I saw a charge at a high-end jewelry store for $2,000. I clicked on the details, my heart sinking. It was for a men's watch purchased 3 weeks ago. I felt like I was going to be sick. I grabbed my phone and texted Marcus, "I need your help. Sarah's cheating." The response came almost immediately, "I'm coming over." 20 minutes later, Marcus was at my door with a 6-pack of beer. He took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug, the kind of wordless support only a true friend can give. We sat at the kitchen table and I told him everything. He listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each detail. When I finished, Marcus leaned back in his chair and sighed. "I hate to say I told you so, but..." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I saw her last month at the Pearl District with some guy. I wasn't sure if I should tell you. I thought maybe it was just a work thing, but the way they were looking at each other..." He trailed off. My hands clenched into fists. "Who is he?" Marcus shook his head. "I don't know his name, but he looked like a businessman. Older, maybe 45. Expensive suit, fancy watch. They were having drinks at that rooftop bar." The image burned in my mind. Sarah with another man laughing and drinking while I sat at home thinking she was working late. "What do you want to do?" Marcus asked. I looked at him, And for the first time that night, I felt something other than pain. I felt determination. I want proof, solid proof. Then I'm done. Marcus nodded. I know a guy. Private investigator. He owes me a favor. Want me to set it up? I did not hesitate. Set it up. Marcus pulled out his phone and started typing. And legally, he asked without looking up. I took a deep breath. I'm calling my lawyer tomorrow. Oregon is a no-fault divorce state. But if she's spending our money on him, I want every penny back. Marcus looked up at me, his expression serious. You sure about this? Once you go down this road, there's no coming back. I thought about Sarah walking out that door in her red dress, her face cold and indifferent. I thought about the messages on her phone, the lies, the betrayal. I'm sure, I said. Marcus reached across the table and squeezed my shoulder. Then let's get you that proof. It was 2 a.m. when I heard a car pull into the driveway. I was still sitting in the living room now in complete darkness. I had turned off all the lights an hour ago, preferring the shadows. I heard the key in the lock, the door opening, footsteps in the hallway. Sarah walked into the living room and jumped when she saw me sitting there. You're still up, she asked, her voice startled. I did not move. Where were you? My voice was flat, emotionless. She sighed, the sound heavy with exhaustion. I told you, dinner with friends. Until 2 a.m, I asked. She dropped her purse on the side table. We went for drinks after. I stood up slowly and turned on the lamp beside me. The sudden light made her blink, and I got my first good look at her. Her makeup was smudged around her eyes, her lipstick was gone, and her dress was wrinkled. But what made my blood boil was the mark on her neck, a dark purple bruise just below her ear. You have a mark on your neck, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. Her hand flew to her neck, covering the spot. I bumped into something. The lie was so transparent it would have been funny if it were not so devastating. I laughed, a hollow sound that echoed in the quiet room. You think I'm stupid, Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no urge to comfort her. Clarence, please. I don't want to fight. I took a step toward her. Who is he? She shook her head. There's no one. I felt the rage building hot and consuming. His name. Now. She backed away from me. Stop interrogating me. I'm not a criminal. Her voice rose defensive and angry. I matched her volume. You're a cheater. That's worse. The words hung in the air between us. Sarah's face crumpled and she started crying in earnest. You don't understand. Things between us haven't been good. You're always working. You never pay attention to me anymore. I stared at her, incredulous. So instead of talking to me, you go fuck someone else. She flinched at the language. Don't use that language with me. I stepped closer, my voice dropping to a whisper that was somehow more terrifying than shouting. Get out of my sight. Sarah looked at me with wide, frightened eyes, then turned and ran up the stairs. I heard the bedroom door slam shut and then silence. I stood there in the living room, my whole body shaking, and realized that the woman I had loved was a stranger. The next morning I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. I could not face my coworkers, could not pretend everything was normal when my world was falling apart. Instead, I met Marcus at a coffee shop downtown, and he introduced me to Frank. Frank was in his 50s, a former police detective who now worked as a private investigator. He had the kind of face that had seen everything and was surprised by nothing. We shook hands, and I passed him a folder with Sarah's information and a recent photo. I need to know everything, I told him. Where she goes, who she meets, how long this has been going on. Frank flipped through the papers, his expression neutral. I will have something for you in a week, maybe less. I nodded, feeling a strange sense of relief. At least I was doing something, taking action, instead of drowning in uncertainty. One more thing, Frank said as he stood to leave. Are you sure you want to know? Sometimes ignorance really is bliss. I looked him in the eye. I am already in hell. I might as well know why. After Frank left, I drove to a law office in the Pearl District and met with Patricia Chen, a divorce attorney Marcus had recommended. She was in her 40s, sharply dressed with an air of confidence that immediately put me at ease. I laid out everything for her. The messages, the financial records, the lies. She listened carefully, taking notes on a legal pad. When I finished, she looked up at me. Oregon is a no-fault state, which means we do not need to prove adultery to get a divorce. But we can use evidence of financial infidelity to argue for a more favorable asset division. I want the house, I said firmly. I paid the down payment from my savings before we got married. Patricia nodded. We can make that happen. Do you have documentation? I pulled out a folder with the bank records, showing the $50,000 transfer I had made 4 years ago. She smiled. Good. You are prepared. That helps. We spent the next hour discussing strategy, and by the time I left her office, I felt like I had some control over the situation again. The days that followed were the strangest of my life. Sarah and I lived in the same house but existed in parallel universes. We did not speak except when absolutely necessary. We did not eat meals together. She slept in the guest room. Every night she would leave around 7 and not come home until after midnight. I did not ask where she was going, and she did not offer explanations. During the day, I worked from home, and in the evenings I quietly transferred money from our joint accounts into a separate account Patricia had helped me set up. I was meticulous, documenting everything, building my case. 5 days after hiring him, Frank called. I have got what you need. We met at the same coffee shop, and he handed me a thick manila envelope. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were dozens of photographs. Sarah and a man I did not recognize walking hand in hand through Pioneer Courthouse Square. Sarah and the same man kissing outside a boutique hotel. Sarah and the man shopping together, him draping a diamond necklace around her neck. Each photo felt like a fresh wound. His name is David Brennan, Frank said, sliding a printed report across the table. He is 47 years old, CEO of a commercial real estate company called Brennan Properties. Divorced. 2 years ago or so, I thought. He paused and I looked up from the photos. What do you mean, or so you thought? Frank leaned back in his chair. I did some more digging. His divorce is not finalized. He is separated from his wife, but they are still legally married. And here is where it gets interesting. His wife, her name is Catherine Brennan. She is a corporate lawyer at one of the biggest firms in Portland, specializing in high-stakes litigation. I felt a cold satisfaction settle over me. She does not know about. Sarah. Frank shook his head. Not yet. But I have a feeling she would be very interested to find out. I looked down at the photos again. At Sarah's face lit up with happiness as this David character kissed her cheek. She thought she had found her escape, her upgrade. She had no idea what was coming. I brought the evidence to Patricia the next day. She spread the photos across her desk, studying each one carefully. When she looked up, there was a gleam in her eye. This is very good indeed. I leaned forward. What is the next step? She steepled her fingers. We file for divorce immediately. We document everything, every dollar spent, every lie told. And then, she paused for effect. We contact Catherine Brennan. Why, I asked, though I was starting to understand. Patricia smiled, and it was not a kind smile. Because she has the resources to make his life hell. And if Sarah thinks she is running off into the sunset with this man, she is in for a very rude awakening. Catherine Brennan does not strike me as the type to take this quietly. I felt something like hope stirring in my chest. That jewelry he bought Sarah, the necklace in the photos, that came from marital assets, did it not? Assets that legally belonged to Catherine. Patricia nodded. Exactly. And that makes it very interesting from a legal standpoint. We can use that. I sat back in my chair, processing everything. I want Sarah to know I am not the weak man she thinks I am. Patricia's expression softened slightly. Oh, she will know soon enough. Trust me. That evening I prepared for the confrontation I had been both dreading and anticipating. Sarah came home around 9, looking tired and irritated. I was sitting at the dining room table with the manila envelope in front of me. Sarah, sit down, I said calmly. She glanced at me, then at the envelope. I am tired, Clarence. My voice hardened. Sit down. Something in my tone made her comply. She pulled out a chair across from me, her expression wary. I pushed the envelope across the table. Open it. Her hands moved slowly, reluctantly. When she pulled out the first photo, the color drained from her face. She flipped through them one after another, her hands starting to shake. You hired someone to follow me. Her voice was barely a whisper. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. You left me no choice. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face now. Clarence, I can explain. I can explain everything. I don't want your explanations, I said coldly. I want you out. She stood up so fast her chair fell backward. This is my house too. I remained seated, calm. Not for long. My lawyer is filing papers tomorrow morning. I watched her face cycle through emotions: shock, fear, anger, desperation. You cannot do this, she shouted. I stood up slowly, gathering the photos back into the envelope. Watch me. Sarah tried a different approach, her voice turning soft and pleading. Clarence, please. I love you. David means nothing. It was just a stupid mistake. I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt absolutely nothing. Then why have you been fucking him for 4 months? The crude language made her flinch. She had no answer. The silence stretched out, broken only by her crying. Then I played my final card. You know what is funny, I said conversationally. David is still married. His wife is a lawyer. A very powerful, very vindictive one, according to my investigator. Sarah's eyes went wide, her tears stopping abruptly. What she whispered. I smiled, and I knew it was not a nice smile. Yeah. He did not tell you that, did he? You thought you found your rich Prince Charming ready to whisk you away to a better life. But he is a liar just like you. And his wife, she is watching him now. I made sure of that. Sarah's face went from pale to green. What did you do? She asked, her voice shaking. I picked up my phone and showed her the email I had sent to Catherine Brennan's law firm that afternoon, complete with photos and documentation. I contacted her attorney. She is very interested in meeting the woman who has been sleeping with her husband and helping him spend her money. Sarah grabbed the edge of the table to steady herself. You bastard, she hissed. I walked past her toward the stairs. I am not the bastard here. You have 1 week to move out. Take your shit and leave. She followed me into the hallway. Where will I go? There was genuine panic in her voice now. I turned to look at her one last time. Go to David. Oh, wait. He will not take you in now that his wife knows. Good luck figuring it out. I went upstairs, leaving her standing alone in the hallway, her sobs echoing through the house that would soon be mine alone. 2 months later, I signed the final divorce papers in Patricia's office. The settlement was everything I had hoped for. I kept the house since I had paid the down payment, and could prove Sarah had misused marital funds for her affair. She was required to pay me back $5,000 for the money she had spent on David. She also had to cover her own legal fees since the court found her at fault for the financial infidelity. It was not about the money, not really. It was about justice, about not letting her walk away without consequences. Marcus filled me in on what happened to Sarah after she moved out. She had tried to stay with David, showing up at his office and his apartment, but Catherine Brennan had already struck. She filed for divorce and demanded full disclosure of all his assets, including the gifts he had given to Sarah. David, facing a massive legal battle and potential financial ruin, cut Sarah off completely. He changed his number, blocked her on everything, and made it clear she was a liability he could not afford. Sarah ended up moving in with an old college friend across town, couch surfing until she could find her own place. Her job situation fell apart too. Word got around her company about the affair and the drama, and while they could not fire her for personal issues, they made it clear she had no future there. She resigned 3 weeks after our separation. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she was working retail now, a massive step down from her marketing career. Marcus told me all this during one of our regular coffee meetups, and I expected to feel satisfaction, maybe even joy at her downfall. Instead, I felt empty, hollow. The revenge I thought I wanted did not fill the hole her betrayal had left. For the first month after she moved out, I was a mess. I could not sleep more than a few hours a night. I would wake up in the middle of the night reaching for someone who was not there, then remember why. I lost weight because cooking for one person felt pointless. Work suffered because I could not focus. Marcus noticed and intervened. He dragged me to the gym, forced me to go on hikes, reconnected me with friends I had neglected during my marriage. Slowly, painfully, I started to function again. The real turning point came when Marcus suggested I talk to someone. Man, you need to process this stuff, he said one Saturday morning as we stood on top of Angel's Rest overlooking the Columbia River Gorge. You cannot just bottle it up. I resisted at first, thinking therapy was for people who could not handle their problems. But eventually I made an appointment with a counselor named Dr. Helen Rodriguez. Dr. Helen was in her 60s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. In our first session, I told her everything expecting judgment or pity. Instead, she said something that changed my perspective. Betrayal tells you everything about the betrayer and nothing about you. Her choices were hers alone. They do not reflect your worth or value. It sounds simple, but hearing those words from someone objective made them real. Over the next few months, I saw Dr. Helen every week. We worked through my anger, my feelings of inadequacy, my fear of trusting again. She helped me understand that Sarah's affair was not about me being insufficient. It was about her own issues, her own choices, her own character flaws. I learned that I could not have prevented it by being a better husband, because I was already a good husband. The problem was never me. Slowly, the weight I had been carrying started to lift. I began to focus on myself in ways I had not in years. I enrolled in online Spanish classes, something I had always wanted to do. I renovated the house, turning the guest room where Sarah had slept into a home office. I booked a solo trip to Costa Rica, something that terrified and excited me in equal measure. Costa Rica changed something fundamental in me. Standing on a beach in Manuel Antonio, watching the sunset paint the sky in impossible colors, I realized I did not need anyone to complete me. I was whole on my own. The happiness I felt in that moment came from within, not from another person. I could build a life I loved without a partner, and if someone came along who added to that life rather than completing it, then maybe I would consider letting them in. But I did not need it. That realization was freedom. When I returned to Portland, I felt like a different person. The betrayal was still part of my story, but it no longer defined me. I reconnected with old hobbies, joined a recreational soccer league, started attending tech meetups again. I was building a life that was authentically mine, not shaped by someone else's expectations or needs. Marcus noticed the change. "You seem lighter," he said one evening over beers. I thought about it and realized he was right. The heaviness that had been crushing me for months was gone. I learned that betrayal teaches you who people really are when they think you are not looking. I learned that love without respect is just an illusion, pretty on the surface but hollow underneath. I learned that trust once shattered cannot be glued back together with apologies and promises. But most importantly, I learned that I deserve better. I deserve honesty, loyalty, and genuine love. Sarah chose temporary pleasure over permanent commitment, and that says everything about her character and nothing about mine. That is her loss, not mine. I do not hate Sarah anymore. Hate requires energy, emotional investment, and she is not worth either. I have reached indifference, which Dr. Helen told me is the final stage of healing. She is just someone I used to know, someone who taught me hard lessons about human nature and my own strength. When I think about her now, I feel nothing. No anger, no pain, just a distant acknowledgement that she existed in my past. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I was sitting in a coffee shop in downtown Portland working on my laptop. The shop was busy with the lunch rush, people coming and going, the hum of conversation filling the space. I glanced up from my screen and saw her. Sarah was walking past the window, looking thinner than I remembered, her face tired and drawn. She was carrying grocery bags, wearing jeans and a plain sweater instead of the designer clothes she used to favor. Our eyes met through the glass, and I saw something in her expression that might have been regret or maybe just recognition. She stopped walking and stared at me for a long moment. I could see her debating whether to come inside. Part of me wondered what she would say if she did. Would she apologize? Would she try to explain? Would she ask how I was doing? But I realized I did not want to know. I gave her a small nod, polite but distant, the kind of acknowledgement you give a stranger. Then I looked back down at my laptop and continued working. When I glanced up again a minute later, she was gone. I felt lighter, unburdened. I finished my coffee, packed up my things, and walked out into the afternoon sunshine. The city felt full of possibilities, my life stretching out ahead of me like an open road. I thought about everything that had happened, all the pain and growth and hard-won wisdom, and I realized something profound. Sometimes the best revenge is not making them suffer. It is showing them you are better off without them. And I was. I really was. So let me ask you something. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved because they showed you who they really were? How did you find the strength to rebuild? I would love to hear your story in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories, and share this with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that you are stronger than you think, and that sometimes the ending you did not want becomes the beginning you needed. Take care of yourselves out there, and remember that you deserve people in your life who choose you every single day. Until next time.